Arizona, one of the sunniest states in the country. With all this sunshine, solar panels seem like a no-brainer, right?
Well, hold on. Before you commit to a rooftop system, let's break down the advantages and disadvantages of having solar panels in Arizona. Today we're going to cover some topics that will give you some insight into solar panels, including the cost, something called net metering, something else called net billing, leasing versus owning, and whether a partial system might be better for you. Stick around. Let's start with the obvious fact. Arizona gets a lot of sun. But let's also consider fact number 2. I'm not a solar panel installer, but as a realtor, I know how to read contracts. More than that, I had the pleasure of sitting through a real estate solar panel training class for 3 hours with Tara Rutkowski. Now, Tara's not only a great agent, she used to sell solar panels, so she knows the ins and outs of the contracts and what to look for when you buy a home. So let's get back to the lots of sun. We know Phoenix and Tucson get almost over 300 days of sun every year. That means more energy production and a better return on investment for solar buyers. But how much money do you actually save? Let's take a look at the numbers. A residential solar panel system in Arizona can run anywhere from $15,000 to $25,000 on average. Now, if you have a bigger house and you want a bigger power plant, that could be a lot more. If you only need it for a small generation, it could be a lot less. But between $15,000 to $25,000 is a good mark. You also receive federal tax credits of up to 30% on that purchase. But let me tell you a little bit about those 30% credits. They're not going to cut you a check for 30%. What that tax credit is, it's an offset against taxes you already owe. If you don't owe any taxes this year, you're not going to get money back because you don't owe any taxes. It's a credit, not a refund. Now, it will roll over to the next year, so if you owe taxes next year, you can write that off. And that's very important to know depending on the contract you write when you buy solar panels. The tax credit does not count if you're leasing those solar panels, only if you're a buyer. Now, the lender who gives you the loan on those solar panels, they might in the contract give you 2 sets of numbers of what your monthly payment's going to be. One will be much lower. That's if you pay that credit to them at the beginning of the contract, that 30%, it'll lower your cost. Of course, you're paying off the principal of the loan, right? But if you don't, then you're going to get the higher number. And that might not be worthwhile depending on what your electric bills are. So what's your average electric bill in Arizona? It's about $134 per month. That's on average. If you have a bigger home, it's a lot more. If you have a pool, it's more. If you have an EV charger for your Tesla, it's going to be more. And in the summertime, that will go up by about $100. So it'll be more $238 per month in the summertime, again, on average. But this is where we get to what's called net metering and why 2017 was so important. Arizona used to have what's called full net metering, which means when you over-generated electricity, it went back into the system and they credited you at the retail price. So if it was 12.8 cents per kilowatt hour, when you sent a kilowatt hour in, you got 12.8 cents on your bill. So when you used energy at night, when the sun doesn't shine, that credit will offset your bill. But now, utilities like APS and SRP, Salt River Project, have created what's known as net billing, something completely different. Now, every year, APS has lowered the amount that they pay you for the excess energy you've created. And if we look at this chart, you'll see that right now, if you put a solar panel system on your home this year, they're only paying you, little under 7 cents per kilowatt hour. But later in the night, when you're using electricity, they're charging you 12 to 15 cents. Now, there's still an offset there, but the cost of buying the solar panels isn't as advantageous because you're making less back. And you can see by the chart that every year they've lowered that amount. Good thing about this, if you installed your system before August 31st of 2017, you're on net metering, and that net metering is covered for the next 20 years. They can't change that for the next 20 years. It seems like APS is disincentivizing the use of solar panels in the sunniest place in the country by lowering the return of what they're giving you for your excess energy that you're putting back into the grid. Doesn't sound fair, but it's been approved by the Arizona Corporation Commission, so it's what we got to live with. It is what it is. So which is better, full or a partial solar system? Because of the way APS pays for excess energy, it might be smarter to get a smaller system. Get a system that covers just what you use. The advantage to that is you're not going to have that initial outlay, that cost. And that 30% tax credit may be more, it's going to be smaller, but it may be more usable for you right away if you owe anything on your taxes. With a smaller system, you're going to avoid selling back electricity to APS at a lower rate and then buying it back at a higher rate anyway. And the offset of the cost per month for the solar system should cover that. Now, you have to do some calculations there. You have to be your own advocate, do some math, see which way works better for you. And that gets us to the other side, which is leasing versus owning. Now, with owning, you're going to get the tax credit. But if you lease, there's a couple positives to leasing as well. Now, you're going to pay every month for the lease, but they maintain those panels for you. Without the upfront cost and without the maintenance, it's an easy way to get solar energy on your home. One disadvantage to that is when you go to sell the home, because whoever's going to buy your home is going to not only have to qualify for the mortgage, but they're going to have to qualify for the lease assumption as well. And that could cause a problem with their lender. As an agent, if I'm listing a home and it has solar on there, I'm going to call the lender for the buyer when they make an offer and ask them, hey, do they qualify for both the mortgage and for the solar lease? Just to make sure, because if we get deep into this transaction, 3 days before escrow, we find out the underwriter is not going to approve this loan, we just wasted 30 days. And it takes about 30 days in escrow for this to work its way out. Now, some of those leased systems, there were some contracts by Vivint years ago where they would move the panels for you. Let's say you're the owner of the house and you want to take the panels to your next house. For a fee, they could lift them and move them for you. But what kind of damage does that do to your home? I mean, they're going to make it watertight, but they're not going to replace underlayment on that home anymore. They might replace a few tiles, but your home becomes a little bit less attractive at that point. If you're a buyer, would you buy a home where you knew that the solar panels were just taken off and they just did watertight repairs? Might concern you a little bit. So usually lease assumption is an easier way to go, and they will assume the exact payments that you had at that point. Now, at the end of that lease, let's say you leased for 20 years, that lease runs out. Do you renegotiate that lease? Do you go back into that lease, or do you simply say, nope, I don't want the lease any longer? At that point, they're not going to maintain those panels any longer, but they're probably not going to come pull them off your roof either, because it'll cost them more to take them off the roof than they're worth at that point. So just to recap, for leasing, you don't build any equity in those panels, you never own them, but they are being maintained for you. With owning, once you pay those off, it's all pretty much profit at that point for you. You're not paying that monthly bill anymore, and you're generating power. And even though you're generating and getting less money for it from APS, you're still getting money for it. So it's offsetting your usage anyway. Wrap it up. Should you get solar in Arizona? Depends. Are you going to stay in the home for a long period of time? If so, it may be perfect for you. If you use a lot of electricity, it could also be beneficial to you. If you design a system that matches your usage, a partial system, it may be even more advantageous, because if you're buying, it's a less of an upfront cost. So keep an eye on those net billing rates. Every year they could change those net billing rates and see if a partial system makes more sense for you. Weigh the pros and cons of leasing versus owning and see what the financial hit would be if you're paying the larger ownership payment. I'd like to hear what you think about this. Leave a comment below. Let me know, do you think solar is a good deal? If you found this information helpful, please like and subscribe. Share this to people who may be getting ready to buy a home or maybe buy solar panels. Hit that notification bell, and I'll see you next time.